I spent 20 years helping the good guys win political fights. Mike spent 20 years helping big corporations convince you to buy stuff. Trust us when we say that corporations, big food, big ag, big pharma, big chemical, have owned Washington for decades. They've been pulling the marionette strings for both parties for as long as anyone can remember. We know because we helped them do it. If your hero has been in DC for more than a year or two, they've been infected.
Just follow the money.
Now, we're trying to do our penance by telling the truth about it. Why? Because we want to help turn our country around. And also, hell seemed like it was going to be too hot. So if you're still watching this, join us.
I'm a sitting cabinet secretary. I can't endorse your Instagram handle.
Okay.
All right, fine.
Sorry.
So Jay, you had a behind-the-scenes look for the Clinton administration. You worked for them. You saw everything behind the scenes. I want to get into that, and I want to know what really goes on behind the scenes in politics and in the government.
To be technically correct, I didn't work in the Clinton administration. So I worked for President Clinton after he left office. I worked for Senator Clinton when she was a senator on her presidential campaign in 2008. I worked on her campaign for the Senate in 2000 for a bunch of other really high-level Democrats for a bunch of years.
How many years total did you work for?
I started working in politics in 1998 and ran screaming for the door in the early 20-teens. So, about 15 years straight through 4 presidential campaigns. I worked for the U.S. Senate Majority Leader, the Democratic leader, for Senator Schumer on his first campaign for the Senate. It's just, I've lost count of the number of campaigns that I've done and the number of jobs that I've had in politics. And yeah.
What goes behind the scenes?
It is not pretty.
How rigged of a deck is it?
It's interesting because so I worked on, and I left politics to become a writer. And I worked on a show called House of Cards. And I created a show on Apple called The Morning Show. But House of Cards is, people think, oh, well, that's where I put the stories of all the corruption. And House of Cards is so elevated in terms of how insane the stuff was. So what people think of is like, I pass you an envelope full of cash and you do what I want. It was always much more complicated than that. Like, corporations have completely controlled our government for decades now. It's not necessarily in like the passing of an envelope, right? I never saw anything like that happen. It was more systematic control of the whole thing by corporations. And many of the politicians I saw lacked the guts to stop it. I joke that I spent so much time behind the curtain that I feel like I hung the curtain sometimes. More of what I saw was that people knew the right thing to do and were unwilling to do the right thing.
Can you give us an example of something that you saw that just like your first time witnessing something like that?
The most shocking one for me, and the one that kind of led me to leave a really great job in the U.S. Senate. Like my office window is on the $50 bill. My kids loved him. My 13-year-old now, and he's like, that's my dad's office window. Like you can point at the $50 bill and see my office window. It was the money was terrible, but the job was really cool. And that, going into the Capitol every morning for work is it's amazing. And the potential to do good is really great too. And I think that dangles like a carrot in front of a lot of people. Like, oh, there's a potential to do good here. But, people that weigh 400 pounds have the potential to lose weight. If you don't lose weight, it doesn't really matter that you got the potential to do good. So the most shocking thing that I saw was in the early 2000s, people voting for the Iraq war when they knew it was a terrible idea. Like, I would be in the room where they would say this is a terrible idea, and then they would walk onto the Senate floor and vote for the war.
Because it was within party lines?
Because they were too scared. That's what I saw more than anything else was gutlessness.
Is it scared because they're afraid of their reelection? Is it afraid because their voter base? What are they afraid of?
Everything. Like yes and yes. Like I really saw I saw so few people who would take a courageous stand on something if there was a cost, right? So like they don't want to make anyone mad. they wanted to keep the people over here happy and the people over here happy and the people over here happy and the donors and the this, and you're scared of re-election and da, da, da. And I saw so few people willing to make a courageous stand on anything. And so, yeah, it was all of it. And it seemed to be a lack of a sense of anything bigger than what we were doing. Like every single thing was defined by what the reaction would be right then. If I do this, then people will be angry. It's like, I have 4 kids, and you have,
He has 2.
right.
I don't have any kids.
So if you parented your children afraid to make them mad all the time, like how crazy would your home be?
Oh, it'd be
Totally insane, right? Like
Yeah.
they would ice cream all the time, and everything would be trashed,
Yeah.
and they would break. I mean, my house would be, I'm going to make my kids upset when I set boundaries, and we have rules and we follow them, and there's chores. And most of the people I saw in Washington seemed to be, they were parenting in this way of no boundaries, rules, and a total fear of making anyone angry.
How were the Clintons when you worked with them?
Personally, I liked them a lot, but I've come to see that like it's not an individual problem, right? It's that there's a systemic problem in Washington. It's existed in both parties since before I was born.
Jay, we keep hearing the drain the swamp, drain the swamp. You've been behind the scenes. What is the swamp? What are they talking about? What do you think the swamp is? And how do we drain it?
So we all get elected, we roll in, but everyone in every building has been there forever. Right. And there's a way of doing things. And most of the time, in most of the regulatory agencies, right? So there's all these regulatory agencies that are set up to govern, I'm making this up because it's here, but like there's a microphone regulate, and these guys govern microphones. And the problem is that the corporations that they're supposed to be regulating have put their own people inside of those agencies.
Like the FDA, FTC,
Exactly.
all those government agencies,
Every single one.
EPA.
The CDC, you name it. Name a regulatory agency, the USDA, if they are in charge of the stuff in our world, and they're in charge of all of it, our cars, our tires. I mean, there's some division of probably the FTC that governs that, right? There really
the Federal
is.
Trade Commission.
So what ends up happening is the corporations put people inside those agencies, and the agencies put people inside those corporations.
So the people that are retiring from the agencies, they go to the private sector as an advisor to the private sector, and then private sector employees get hired by the FTC, I guess. Or if you're a farmer, the USDA, for example, to make sure that you pass laws.
Big Food will put their people inside of USDA and HHS. Like the phrase revolving door, it's really true. Like you exit the federal building and you move into the private sector company, one of the huge Big Food companies. And then the person from the Big Food moves in to replace you inside. And so the idea that they're looking out for us is, I don't know if I'm allowed to, but it's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's bullshit. Like they are looking out for the corporations. And then that'd all be fine if you had elected officials who were like, this is not okay. This is going to stop. Like we are rooting this out, but I didn't see a lot of that. I either saw people that lacked the knowledge that it was going on, or people that didn't have the guts to do anything about it if they had the knowledge. And that's why it's existed under every party literally since before I was born.
We've talked to some CIA officers, and they tell us that all the politicians are friends behind closed doors. Both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Best of friends. When it's 5 o'clock, happy hour, they all get together, they all laugh. But then on camera, it's like, no, I hate you. It's war. Is that true?
It's sort of true. I mean, institutionally, so one of the other wake up calls I had was that like I really had this belief, and I kind of had to have it because I worked in Democratic politics all these years. Was like, we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And then when I stepped back, I had to realize like, no, that's not true. Like this has existed no matter who the president was, no matter what party was in charge forever. So that was a real wake. I've gone through this real reckoning in the last 6 or 7 years. And we can get to like why I think that happened. I mean, I'm still in the reckoning a little bit, but that was more true probably 50 years ago, where they really were friends behind the scenes. What's happened in the last 25 or so years is that people really have split into, I'm on this side and we're good, you're on that side and you're bad, and they actually don't hang out behind the scenes. But the actual elected officials themselves, but the staff does, and the people in the regulatory agencies do. And so there's this kind of swirl in DC of people are friends, and if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, kind of thing. So,
but their bosses are not. So the Democratic officials and the Republican officials that hate each other on TV actually hate each other behind.
I don't want to generalize too much, but yeah, it's more, the hate is more true
now
today than it was 40 or 50 years ago.
Do you feel like, I feel like we're so divided right now with, everyone's tribe of, oh, I'm a Democrat, you're a Republican, I hate everything that you say, and vice versa. Do you feel that can change, that can improve, and we can come to the center, both sides, and be a little bit more pro-America and pro-unity and pro the people, versus just having these tribes of, I hate you because you're this?
I do. That's part of why my, business partner Mike and I started this Instagram. It's a way of talking about issues that's not as true as we're led to believe, because the algorithm and social media feeds us the most intense stuff over here and the most intense stuff over here, and cable news has been doing it forever since the beginning. Cable news, and they've gotten worse as they realize, like, oh, if I double down on attacking these people, my ratings go up, and if I double down on attacking these people, my ratings go up. And so cable news and social media have been playing this game for a long time, and it leads us to believe that it's the truth. 50% of people over here, and they hate the 50% of people over here. My guess is that it's more like 15%, 1-5 over here, and 15% over here, and they really do hate each other and have no ability to see the reality. And then the other, I'm not great at math, the other 70% of us are kind of like, we more or less want the same thing. It's not that I see the exact same pathway to get there. If the three of us had to write it down secretly, like, I want my kids to be healthy, I want to be healthy myself, I want to be able to work. If I work hard, I'd like to be able to be rewarded financially for it. I'd like to be able to trust the labels I read,
basic stuff.
Basic stuff. Like, everybody wants that. I might have a slightly different or even wildly different path for getting there than the two of you do, but we more or less want the same thing. And we don't spend most of our time waking up and hating people on the other side. It's
not it. But once we get labeled as either a Democrat or a Republican, then it's like, oh, so you must be this. Oh, so you must be that.
That's just letting us be pulled into the game that the algorithm and cable news and the sort of, I call it like the legacy media wants us to play,
Your business partner, Mike, was in the corporate world while you were in the government world.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet, and what led you guys to work to kind of, I guess, expose everything?
Yeah, we met, and I wish we'd exposed everything, but we
can start now.
We
can start now.
Right?
Let's start exposing.
We're working on it, and again, it's not like a treasure trove of secrets. It's more like telling the story of how did we end up with this? Well, listen to this.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in.
Yeah, it started with this thing. It started with that thing. So I was in politics, and he was working in advertising, for huge brands and labels and that kind of stuff. And we met when I first moved to Los Angeles, which is 19 years ago now. So almost 20 years. I'm from Macon, Georgia originally. And, went to college in New York City, lived there for a while, kind of in DC for a while too, back and forth from New York and DC, and then moved out here, almost 20 years ago. And I met Mike almost right after I got here. And we were really good friends. We both have been sober a while. He got sober before I did, and we got much closer through that process. And we started working together when I got to know Bobby Kennedy, who's now the Secretary of HHS, obviously, through sobriety, through 12 steps. And as he was running for president, I had the temerity to say, and like, I'm going to set this joke up, but you guys can see it coming. I had the temerity to say in what year? In 2020, early 2023, that perhaps Joe Biden might not be the best candidate for the Democrats to run. And it was like I had spoken such wild blasphemy against the orthodoxy by saying that. Fast forward to the debate where I was like, hello, I was kind of saying this like 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And my friend Bobby Kennedy was running for president, and I knew him really well in the way that you get to know someone through sobriety. And I knew his heart, and I found him to be just a kind and honest, and more than anything else, a very courageous person. And that was the thing that I had seen, as I mentioned, that it was really lacking in Washington was courage. I mean, people would be like, that is a terrible, I mean, I don't mean to meander here, but I'm going to get back to it. I watched Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, couldn't have been in a safer seat. I mean, a Democrat from California, personally loaded, no downside to being courageous, right? Like none, except maybe some people are going to get mad at you. I watched her in a private room of senators say that the war in Iraq was a bad idea and that we shouldn't vote for it. And then she said, but I'm just one senator, and so I'm going to end up voting for it. And I was like, just one senator? There's only 100 of you. You're the most powerful legislative body in the world. You are 1 in 100 of those people. You could be a leader and you could stand against this, or you're going to walk out there. And I saw that was a huge version of it, but I saw that kind of thing over and over. And so when I saw the courage that my friend Bobby had to stand up for stuff, if he decided something was right, if he believed something was right, he would stand up for it. And whether I agreed with him on all of it, that was real, I was drawn to that. So when he ran for president, I called Mike and I was like, I'm going to help my friend Bobby run for the Democratic nomination. I know you're probably not going to do this, but would you help us? Like, would you help me I want to make some ads and I want to really tell his story. And he was like, yeah, sure. It was almost like I think he felt like it was like a performance art project for him. He's like, well, I've never done this before. And so he did it. And the more he went on the road with Bobby and was filming him, and the more he got to know him, the more he realized that he'd been sold a story about this person. Bobby had stood up to all these big corporations, and they had attacked him and made him look like a crazy person and this and all these things that he's just not. I know him really, really well. And it was really eye-opening for Mike to see that. He was like, wow, I said yes to you because I thought this will be wild getting to film this crazy person. And, Mike he's a music video director, done tons of huge hip hop artists. And he loves wild, crazy, weird people. He's like, I have no idea what I'll see being on the road with a crazy person who's running for president. And he would call me at the end of each day and he's not crazy. He's really solid and strong and courageous. He was like, oh my God, I thought of myself as a really savvy person. I thought that I could really discern when I was being sold bullshit, and I completely bought it. It was a real wake up call for him. And out of that grew, this kind of company that we've built together. But it was a long answer to your question. But
no, it's a great answer. What's the goal for you guys?
To talk about things, to tell the stories of how we got here in a nuanced, complex, non-partisan way. Not like these guys are good and these guys are bad, which is, in my experience, just, I keep using the word bullshit, but I'm going to stick to it. It's total bullshit. Mm-hmm. That is definitely one thing I saw in Washington was like, there's not good guys and bad guys, and so to talk about things to tell stories in a nuanced and complex way, and to speak to what I believe is the 70% of people who aren't locked into, this or this, and to really tell the story from behind the scenes of the degree of corporate corruption and control in our country. Not like a lot of people that say that, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but when I think of that, I remember the WTO protests, and it's everyone and insanity and people screaming and yelling. It's no, just in a calm, sober, thoughtful, kind of funny, not freaked out way. No, corporations control our government. Not oh my God, it's all gonna. It's just hey, here's the deal. Here's how it happened. And
what about the paid protesters? Because the reason why I ask is I drive up and down the 101 freeway when I go home. And every day where there's some news about President Trump, Greenland, like this morning, bumper to bumper traffic, I get up to the bridge and I see all these protesters holding "Leave Greenland alone."
It was just past Winnetka. I
exactly.
saw the same thing this morning.
Yeah. And so another day, there was the shooting, unfortunately, in Minnesota. And then again, the next day, keep ICE out of California. And I'm just who are these paid protesters? Who's paying for them? Because I feel anytime there's something on the news, I just see these protesters with these professional signs, and it's just the same crowd. Do you know what that, like, is that a new thing? Was that happening before?
I think I have no idea if people are paid or not paid. What I think,
It's just too organized. So to me, it appears like there's no way all these people are going to make these signs like literally the day before something comes out, and they're just organized and boom, it's right there.
I mean, I will tell you, I'm not, who knows? I mean, what I was going to say is, we live in one of the we live in one of these poles, right? We live in like one of the most liberal cities in the world,
Yeah.
and so that gives people the idea sometimes that everyone agrees with them. Everyone shares their ideology, and there's a real ideology around that. I grew up in Macon, Georgia, where we didn't, and a lot of people I know here won't talk to someone who doesn't agree with them chapter and verse.
Yeah, it's terrible.
On politics. And I think that's, first of all, crazy and a real loss, because there are a lot of people that I love that are all over the political spectrum. I've never met a single person that aligns with me exactly on my politics. And I can't wait to meet that person, because they would, like me, be perfect. But, but why do I need someone to align with me 100% to love them or be friends with them? Like, my family was and is all over the political spectrum. Oh, my friends are. And that's one of the beauties of the 12-step program, is that I meet someone and I love how they talk about their wife or their family or their kids. And then I find out they didn't vote the same way I did. And it was mind-bending for me, like 10 years ago when this happened. And I was like, I'm supposed to hate that person, but I love that person. I've been listening to them talk, and I know what's in their heart now. And they didn't vote the same way as me. What am I going to do? And I made the decision. This is the beginning of my journey. I made the decision to continue to love them. And it really opened my mind and my heart to what's going on. Back to the protesters. I think we live in a place where it becomes an echo chamber, and everyone and echo chambers, I'm mixing a metaphor here, but like, things can get more extreme when you don't have anything
Outside of your beliefs.
Exactly. You don't have anything that like modifies your belief. And so everyone you talk to is like, hell yeah, that's exactly right. And you're like, well, I don't think that. I love to talk to people that disagree with me, because I'm
Me
like,
too, because you learn.
Exactly. Like, tell me where I'm wrong on that. Well, it's not exactly that happened. Oh, cool. Really? What did happen? But I will tell you, because as you were saying, I was like, man, I don't know about paid and I don't. I mean, I have no idea if they're paid or not.
I don't either.
But
it just appears because it's so organized and so well planned.
Well, but when I was an advanced guy at first in politics, and that's the person that sets up rallies and sets up events and sets up protests and that kind of,
that's what I wanted.
It's a right out in the open job. I mean, I roll into town and, we're going to protest the Truth Hurts podcast. And I go get some people together, and we're going to meet here at this time. We're going to have signs, and I would make the signs. I'd stay up late in my hotel room, me and 2 or 3 volunteers, and we would make the signs and then hand them out to the protesters, and we'd make them all look different. And this, we actually did put in House of Cards, where you see them all making the signs. You're like, ooh, use different. It's like, hopefully no kids are listening, like the Tooth Fairy. You know what I mean? Like, you write a little note from the Tooth Fairy. You make sure you do it with your left hand.
Yeah,
so your kids aren't like, that's Daddy's handwriting. We just did it with protest signs. And that happened a lot. And it happens on both sides of the aisle. And there's a lot in politics that is staged.
What are some things that are staged in politics?
Well, like that. I mean, rallies, and a lot of times there's like staged outrage about stuff. People are like, I'm supposed to be outraged about this, and so they, yeah.
Do you fall for what you see on TV now? Are you able to see right through it on the news mainly?
Do you even watch the news?
I don't. I read the news. Like I like to read on a physical paper, because because the algorithm doesn't move it around for me and feed me what it thinks I want. And so I literally like to read a physical. I'm 48, so I'm old. My son thinks I'm super old.
They call you Unc now.
Yeah.
You're an uncle.
I swore off cable news after the 2008 presidential election. And
why? What changed?
I saw how empty and dishonest it was.
What was dishonest about it? What stood out to you?
Everything, I really just, I found all of it. And I found it to be like rage and disaster porn. it was really just, I was like, this is not a good, just for my own sanity, I was like, this is bad for me. Watching this is really, really bad for me.
Can you give me an example of like what you saw, just so that I can?
Yeah, I mean, I happened to be working for Senator Clinton then in a primary against then Senator Obama. And the press was really stacked against us. And I just watched them bias story after story after story for him. And I ultimately grew to really love him. But at the time I didn't. And I just like watched the stories, and I watched how they would tweak it in his favor, and they would and I just.
In Obama's favor?
Mm-hmm. And it made me really angry. And I saw the capacity. I got to see what it was like. I had come up working for the people who the press thought were the good guys. I had worked in Democratic politics forever, and I know very few journalists who, when they're being honest, aren't Democrats, right? And so I grew up, I had always worked for the candidate that they thought was the good guy. So like my candidate got the good press, and it was easy to feed them stuff, and it was easy, and all of a sudden I was on the other side of the fence. And I was like,
who decided to make you on the other side of the fence?
I had known Senator Clinton for a while. I met her, and then I worked on Chuck Schumer's first race for the Senate in 1998. He was a congressman. And then I worked for the last month or two on her Senate race in 2000. And so I'd spent some time with her, and I really liked her. And so in that race, I chose her. I was also clear that we were going to win, which we didn't. But then all of a sudden I was like, whoa, when the press isn't lined up for you, this is brutal. And I hadn't processed that moment for a while, but I was like, I just always assumed they'd be on my side. It was like.
But who picked for them to not be on your side and to be on Obama's side?
I don't know. I don't know. His story was better than hers. I mean, he was.
Could it have been connections, or maybe from people he knew and said, "Hey guys, support this candidate"? Was there something going behind the scenes to kind of like control and say we want?
No, it's usually not that. It's usually not the Hollywood version of how the dark arts works. It's usually like there's kind of groupthink among the press. His story was better. He was new and fresh on the scene and really compelling and cool. You know what I mean? Cool goes
maybe
a long
he got
way.
better clicks, more viewers, more people.
He got all that. He had this energy behind him. She'd like been around for a long time, and she'd been battling with the press for 20 years when she was running. I mean, more than 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years when she was running for president. So I was just on the wrong side of it, and that was really weird. I never thought that would. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, we can't get good coverage for anything. This is wild. And so that was an awakening for me a bit. But I think my real wake up call was through COVID. When I really trusted which my wife thought was just hilarious, but I really trusted the authorities. I really trusted what we were told. I like lined up in the middle of the night for my vaccine, and I wore my mask everywhere, and I would yell at people who didn't do, I'm not proud of that stuff now, but I just bought it. Like these people are the experts, and they wouldn't lie to us. And then I realized that they had lied to us, and whether wittingly or unwittingly, whether they just had bad information or whether it was that's not my place to say. And then I saw this party that I had worked for my whole life, like doubling down on censorship, and we're going to control social media, and we're going to and I was like, wait, we're not idiots. Like, that is one thing I saw in elections, is that people vote for the candidate that's in their best interest. And every single time. The best candidate has won every election that I've ever watched. And that was that period was a real wake up call for me, watching the degree to which I had my blinders on. And it kind of all added up, right? Like being on the other side of the press in 2008, I was like, wait a second, this sucks. Like, my line used to be like, we walk on water and they say she can't swim, and I was like, whoa, like, I say 2 + 2 is 4, and they're go, wrong. And I'm like, no, but objectively it's two. Wrong. That's not right. I was like, wow, I really can't do anything right. This is wild. And then fast forward to 12, 13 years later in COVID. And I got to see the degree to which things lined up. And I was like, oh, I need to open my eyes a little bit more to what's going on here. And yeah.
How do you think President Trump is handling the media? Because objectively, if you look at it, he's getting a lot of flack from the media as well. And he's been able to kind of turn that around to his advantage and kind of control that. How do you see him as far as a politician or a businessman? Or
he is more masterful with the press than anyone I've ever seen in my entire career by like leaps and bounds. I have my issues with him. I mean, that's one of the things is like the friends I came up with in Democratic politics, if I don't say right now that I hate him and he's a reprehensible human and they won't talk to me again. And I'm like, wait, why can't I say not my favorite guy, but I don't wake up in the morning rageful at him and I see some stuff that I'm like, wow, I'm glad he's changed this and this and this. I'm glad he put my friend Bobby in, the Secretary of State in it. And I don't agree with this or this or this. And I sure wouldn't have done that. And like, why, what's wrong with that view? But you asked about the handling of the press, and it's because what people don't see on the outside, and I know a lot of the journalists, is like, he does the arms length, those people over there. Not. And I won't say it, but there's a journalist who's a very close friend of mine, and this person, I won't even use a gender. This person's been covering President Trump for a long time. And the relationship on camera is contentious, and I've never had a lunch or coffee with this person where President Trump didn't call on the phone, call or text while we were sitting there. And so that's, and work the story, and I don't know that you got that right. And then like, and so I'm just saying this as a Politico. I'm saying as a Politico, and I'm not a Politico anymore. Thank God. I'm a writer and I'm very happy. But that is a really masterful working of it, where it's like, there's the on camera, and then there's the like, hey, that wasn't the behind the scenes kind of, yeah.
How is President Trump behind the scenes from your contact? How is the relationship? How is he as a...
I've never met him. Never in my life.
The feedback you've gotten from your press friend.
That he's nothing like what is portrayed in the press, that he's interested and interesting and fun and funny. And, someone showed me a clip of him on The View from like just before he was announcing for president. And it's like the friendliest, laughing and hanging out with Barbara Walters and Whoopi and like all these people who would pour gasoline on themselves and light themselves on fire before they would say anything other than, I hate, he's the wrong. And it's just like, wow, like you guys were all friends. And then it became this orthodoxy that I have to hate this person. And I don't want to hate anyone, but yeah, no, nothing like the portrayal.
How do people remove their blinders so they can see what you see?
It is, when you say what I see, do you mean just like...
You can see, like, for example, you could compliment someone that clearly is not in the same party as you. You know what I mean? And you talked about you have friends that are hardcore one way and they will disown you if you don't talk like them, act like them, vote like them. Mm-hmm. But you're able to kind of see without the blinders and go, you know what? I may not like this, but I can appreciate and compliment this of a person. How do people get to that level so that we can be more in the center and not so far apart?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It is a real journey. For me, I can only speak for me. It's been a real journey, but I think way more people wake up that way than we think. Certainly living in Los Angeles, or if you click on a few of the things on social media, it'll just rage bait you all day long. It's like, oh, this person wants to see, this person is a liberal who wants to see redneck Republicans acting like idiots. And you will just get that. This person is a Republican who wants to see snowflake liberals doing stupid, and you'll just get that all day long. And you'll just be like, those people are all like that, and those people are all like that. But it's not where most people are. And part of what we're trying to do is just speak to that broader middle. For me, because I woke up every day with a blue shirt on and said, we're right and they're wrong. It was a real journey. Like, I hope that no one has to go on the journey that I went on, because it was a real, like, oh my gosh. It's really hard to, for me, it was really hard to realize that I'd been wrong, period. I mean, it still is kind of hard for me. Ask my wife.
I think when people make it an identity, it's very difficult to be wrong.
And it was my identity. It was really my identity. And it is some people's identity. But again, I think it's 15% and
you
15%.
have to remove the identity from you and have your own identity, and then have your beliefs, and constantly talk to people you disagree with or you might not agree with to learn. Our goal is with the show is to bring on people from all walks of life to be able to get that 15% that you talk about on this side and 15% on that side to 5%, or maybe eventually to nothing, similar to what you and Mike
because 30% is still a lot.
It's a lot of the population. Out of 300 million people, that's 100 million people.
That's right.
So we want to just get access to information in a way for you can independently think for yourself, so that you can have a discussion with your family member during the holidays and not want to kill each other.
Or maybe not have a political discussion with your family. This is one of the things that drove me from the left. And again, it's not like I find a home on the right, like I'm kind of like,
I feel like you're in the center.
Yeah, I didn't run over there. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a second. Like is the self-certainty and the I know, and this thing happening, I know how it's going to go. First of all, I know it's awful, and I know it will be the end of the world. I'm doing my voice now, which is not so. See, that's like judgmental. I don't want to, but I'm going to keep doing it. I know it's awful, and I know it's going to be the end of the world, and nothing will be the same again, and it will all be awful, and and I'm just like, says who? Says you? Says your prediction? Like, how do you know that this thing might be the greatest thing that ever happened to us? Like, I found an inability to pull back and see a bigger picture, right? Everything is about, and this back to the Iraq war, like this will get me in trouble today. Looking back now, the people that vote, the few courageous people that voted against that war, heroes today. Everyone agrees that war was a terrible idea. I mean, literally everyone. 300 million people, 298 million would be like, yeah, that Iraq war was really stupid. So Dianne Feinstein would have been a hero if she'd had the courage to walk out and be like, I know that I'm going to catch a lot of shit for this, but this is wrong and I'm going to be against it. And so pulling back, like taking a larger view of the world and not being so sure that I know what's right and wrong. And that to me is like being in the middle. Being over here is like, I know I'm right, and the corollary of that is I know I'm right and I know they're wrong. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm right. I'm trying to question things. I'm trying to ask. I'm trying to figure out, like, am I right? I don't know. Like, because I'm telling you, my wife and I in 2020 fought like dogs about this. I was like, you are wrong. This, every single thing that the orthodoxy, every bit of the orthodoxy about that the experts are telling us about COVID is right, and anyone that doesn't agree with it is wrong. And I later was like, no, and not all of it was wrong. A lot of it was wrong. That wasn't 20 years ago. That was 6 years ago, and not even 5.5. And I was wrong a lot. And some of that came in sobriety too, like the humility of like, I think that I live this one way and I know it's right. And then being like, it's not right. And so having to back myself out of it. And it's one of the reasons I love Bobby is because he will revisit an issue. I mean, I have given him enough facts on something. He's like, okay, I'm wrong.
Yeah. One thing, you mentioned Dianne Feinstein a few times, and I know in California we also have Nancy Pelosi, which leads me to how she got so wealthy with being the greatest stock picker of all time. Did you see any inside information while you were in politics of that going on and people took advantage of it to become extremely wealthy? Because it seems like you go into politics flat broke, 3 years later, you're worth 15 million. 5 years later, you're worth 30 million. And then like after a career politician, 30 years in, you got $400 or $500 million.
Making $100,000 a year.
Exactly. Yeah. How is that possible? And what did you see?
I didn't see anyone, breaking the law.
No, not breaking the law, but just
or
having
insider trading, but it would be really easy to do. When I first got to the Senate, I'd been there like 6 months. No, this is right after 9/11. And I knew we had, in the leader's office, we would negotiate all night long during that process. And I would just use truth hurts. Like, I know you guys are lobbying to get $20 million to build a brand new studio. Well, I've been in the room all night long, and I know that the senators have agreed to give you $20 million. Like, I'm just a staffer in the room.
And you hear that.
You're there, you see the agreement coming together, and they're like, all right, fine, we'll do it, but we got a horse trade on this, and we're going to give Truth Hurts 20 million, but tomorrow you got to get, walk out the door and buy 5,000 shares of Truth Hurts, like, because it's about to go. It would be really easy to do. Anyway, after 9/11, the airlines were begging for an airline bailout bill, and I was in the room while that bailout was negotiated. It was not clear they were going to get it. So it wasn't like, they're going to get it. And their stocks were doing this. And I was in the room and I watched the deal come together, and I saw my boss, the Democratic leader, shake hands with the Republican leader, and the deal was done. And I walked out the door, and I didn't have any money. I was about to call my dad and say, hey, totally innocent. I was 23. Totally innocently, hey, you should buy we're from Georgia, right? You should buy some Delta Airlines stock today because and our chief counsel walked by me, and I said, hey man, is it okay for me to tell my dad to buy like 1,000 shares of, and we couldn't have afforded, 100 shares of, and he goes, no, that is not okay. And so I didn't, but it's a window into how easy it would be to do. And people get caught for it. I mean, there's a lot of stories of people getting absolutely busted for that kind of thing. And it's definitely, I'm not sure if it's illegal, but it's huge ethics violation. And I was really careful after that to not, again, I didn't have any money anyway, so it wouldn't have been,
if you
no one was in any danger of me moving markets, but yeah.
It's just very interesting how a lot of politicians become so wealthy off of that while they're in politics.
And then some of that's the revolving door. While they're in politics that's weird. Then they leave politics and it's
even more.
Oh my God. I mean, you walk out the door, you join one of these lobbying firms, and then you walk back in and you lobby your old colleagues, and on behalf of only big food, big pharma, big ag, big chemical. They're the only ones that can pay a U.S. senator's hourly rate,
which is,
astronomical. You go from making.
What is the cost for these big corporations to be able to pass a law that favors them? Like, how much money are we talking about for to move the needle?
So the numbers will sound big, and then when you figure out what they're going to make off of it, it's like they're laughing all the way. They throw a penny in a fountain and get
what are those numbers?
$1 billion back.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like, oh yeah, should we throw 2 pennies in? Because you have politicians walk out the door. Back when I was there, a senator made $176,000 a year, and the Senate and the pay was tied to the federal judge pay, and so it would go up every single year. I don't know what it is now, but 210 to something, and so then you walk out the door and someone offers you, and you've been managing your life at less than 200 grand a year in a very expensive city, and you walk out the door and one of these big firms offers you, $3 million, $5 million to lobby for them. And you're like, I've seen it. They're like, yes, absolutely, I'll do it. Because you go from 176 grand to 5 million. For you,
that's life-changing.
Life-changing. It's an astronomical jump. For Pfizer,
drop in the bucket.
Are you kidding? It's nothing. $5 million to own a former United States senator who just walked out the door and is now going to walk back, who's friends with
everybody,
all 100 senators that work there or in Congress, all 435 of them. I mean, it's nothing. You got to imagine the executives are like, you're never going to believe this.
We got him for $5
million. It's like,
and then the contract they get is billions.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, so $5 million, let's call it 10. 10 for this senator, and it's not just that senator, right? They've got
multiple,
anyone that walks out, and then there are the people that work inside the regulatory agencies, right? So they, and
FDA and the FTC and the
and
EPA.
that staffer's not 10 million or 5 million. That staffer's not 1 million. You know, they're getting that guy for 450 grand, but that person made 96,000 inside. And so you make 96. I mean, I made $60,000 as the press secretary for the U.S. Senate Majority Leader. You know, when I walked out the door and someone gave me, I'd never worked for any of these corporations or anything, but like, I think my first job when I got out of there was like $125,000 a year. I mean, it was
Double.
it changed my whole life. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, I can get a 1-bedroom apartment instead of a studio. But if I'd been willing to work for any of the corporations, it would have been $600,000 or $700,000, which would have changed every single part of my life. And that's what happens. And so then they go work there and they bank some money, and then, you know, they do that for a little while, and then depending on their political affiliation or who they're friends with, they'll move back inside the agency. And it's not like House of Cards where it's like, okay, we're going to trade. It just kind of works. There's just a flow to it, right? Like the ocean doesn't communicate with the other part of the ocean about the tide. The tide just kind of flows, and that's how it works at the regulatory agencies. And they just own it, and they get whatever they want. And yeah, I mean, but back to one of the things you said earlier, and I forgot this. It's like what I came to value the most in politics is honesty, but that's like over. People are like, oh yeah, honest. Great. I really do value it. I don't mean to denigrate it like that, but courage, like, because honesty follows from courage. Because if you're courageous, you'll tell the truth, even if you're gonna pay a cost. And so the two people that after all these years that I still look up to the most, maybe three actually, and they're all over the political spectrum. Paul Wellstone, who was a senator from Minnesota, way more liberal than I was, even when I was a hardcore Democrat, but he had guts. He didn't care what it was going to cost him to do the right thing. By God, he was going to do the right thing. And he died in a plane crash, and it was heartbreaking for me. And Bobby, who, you know, works in a Republican administration but has real courage. And another person who I worked for a long time who has like real courage is Mike Bloomberg, you know, Mayor
New
Bloomberg.
York.
Yeah, he'll just it looks a little different than Bobby's or Senator Wellstone's, but it is a kind of like, what are they going to get mad at me? Okay. You know, there's a grown-upness to it. That's why I brought up parenting, where it's like there's a grown-upness to like, what are they going to get mad at me? And some of his comes from when he held office. He's just a courageous person, but it's so much money that he's like, what's this going to cost? That's why I brought up Feinstein. It was like, I get it. You're hanging on to this job barely, and you don't have any savings. And
there's no risk for you.
That's
Just
kind of scary.
Do the right thing.
Yeah, but you've got a lot of money. Just do the right thing. Who cares? You know, don't you serve something bigger in this than yourself or your ego but most people I saw, if they did come in seeking to serve something bigger, they lost a connection
Along the way.
Yeah.
Based on your experience going into the midterm elections, how do you see, because just from the way you're seeing ads and the media, how do you see the midterms going? And then going into 2028 election, who do you see as like the top candidates for the Democrats and also the Republican side?
I have no idea how the midterms will go. You know, typically, although there's like nothing typical's happened in a long time, but you know, typically the party that controls the White House will lose seats in the midterm election. Doesn't always happen, but you know, it happens a fair amount. But I don't know that will happen or not happen. I think that both parties are really adrift. I mean, both parties have really lost the plot. And I think the Democratic Party has lost the plot more than the Republican Party has. You know, they are so far off base and don't know how far off base they are. That's kind of that you're the most lost when you're lost, but you're like, I know exactly where I am. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And so that's
like the wife saying, honey, pull over and get directions. I know where we're going.
I know where we're going. No clue where we're going. And it's
with flat tires driving. And
they've got one villain and his name is Donald and everything's about him. And it's just like not where most of the rest of the country is. You know, it's just like, hey, that's not, can you guys, we get it. You really, but
the playbook is getting old.
For like 10 years, this is the one thing you've been talking about. Like, how about a positive vision for our country? How about, where are we going to go? How about, what's your vision for change? Like admitting that things are broken, admitting that corporations have taken over Washington on our watch too, and like no one meant for it to happen. No one was like, when I leave office in 4 years, I'd like for corporations to control more things. Like, President Clinton did not come into office and say, in 8 years, I'd like for corporations to control Washington. No way. That guy's from Hope, Arkansas. That is not what's in his heart. 8 years later, they had much more control of Washington than we knew, than he could have realized at the time, right? Mm-hmm. From 92 to 2000, they just have more control. You can go back, and that's when pharma is allowed to start advertising on television, and 3 other deregulations happened that allowed more control. And anyway, so sorry, I'm answering the midterm question.
And then the election, 28.
Again, typically the party that's not in the White House loses seats. I think that the Democratic Party is so lost and so lacking an understanding of how lost they are, and they've turned off so many people that I would, I wouldn't think they would have a great November. But again, midterms are weird because it's individual elections. The Democratic Party's lost, but I don't think he's up for re-election. But like Governor Beshear in Kentucky, who's a Democrat, I mean, at least he's got a D after his name. That guy's not lost. Maybe this is a good pivot to 28.
Mm-hmm.
There are some individuals.
Yeah, who do you see in
They're
28?
few and far between in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Like it's not. There's not a lot of bright lights I see on either side. That, again, courage, right? That have the guts to say this shit cannot go on, and I'm going to piss off people and fix it. And my party is wrecked, and I'm just going to say it out loud.
I feel like Newsom is trying to do that a little bit, no? Like recently on his podcast and certain things, I feel like he's just trying to become a little bit more center.
I think your sentence is exactly right. Trying to become a little more center.
Yeah.
That's not becoming a little more.
Oh, of course,
center.
yeah.
Like I'm trying to be nicer to my wife. Well,
I'm still going to be a.
Are you being nicer to your wife? Or are you trying to be like,
yeah.
And I like him, but I mean.
Let me ask you another question. This is an important question because I feel like as a society, things have gotten so expensive and people are just so much more depressed now. And, him, Brian and I always joke about this. We say LA is dead. It's just not the same LA as it was 20 years ago. And when we go out, people are not having fun when they're out. And I think my theory on this is because they're so stressed out about the high cost of living, rent, with AI taking their jobs in the future, there's just no future in their head of prosperity, that when you go out, you have this weighing debt, just hanging there, just making you a little bit depressed, that you can't have that freedom to party, to let go, to have a good time, to enjoy things.
I mean,
and do you think that has something to do with the corporations just kind of like taking a little bit more control over government?
Well, also the algorithm.
Yeah, I think it's that. It's a lot of things. I'm so glad you said that because I feel exactly the same thing. I have 4 kids. I don't go out very much, but there's a kind of a pall that hangs over LA. And I don't mean that as I love LA. Like
I love LA too. I'm sad that it's like this.
Yeah, me too. And it's LA. It's easy to hate on LA. My wife is like a 3rd generation Angelino. I've got Angelino.
So she knows 20, 25 years ago how LA was.
I've got Angelino kids, 4 of them. And, I'm a Braves fan, but, I'll pull for the Dodgers against anyone but the Braves. But I got 4 Dodgers fans as kids. There's a heaviness that hangs over. I've got a couple theories on it, and they may all
I'd like to hear it.
They may all be wrong. One is our main industry here has been decimated. And
entertainment.
And anyone that tells you, oh, it was a small dip, and it decimated is the word. It is as bad as it's been since the Great Depression. And so there's that, right? So that's one thing. It's tough, when the industry town is really suffering, and suffering in deep ways. Like it's a cancer, right? This isn't
a hiccup.
No, this is not a market correction. There's also a market correction happening, but this is not a market correction. It's not the strike that didn't help. It's not, there's a cancer. The whole business is changing, and it will not look anywhere close to the way it looks in 10. I used to say 20 years. Then I started saying 10. Now I say 5. It's like, my kids don't watch TV or movies. They watch movies when I say, you should see this movie. It's great. Like, they just don't. So there's that. I don't need to go super deep on each one. But there's also this, we live in a town that has a certain political persuasion. And I know very few people that are of that. And I know a lot of people that are of that political persuasion who don't think that the world is ending. Waking up every day and believing the world is ending is a terrible way to live. And it will affect your whole view of your whole day. And then it will start to become your reality. Like, I walk into every situation, the world's ending. Everything is terrible. It's a dumpster fire. Everything is
no offense to the dumpster fires.
Yeah. I can pick up evidence of that all over the place.
Yeah.
And so we live in a city where we've got this self-reinforcing view of the world that's back to I know what's right. What's happening is not right. And there's a dumpster fire and it's just over, it's all just over. And I'm like, it was way closer to over during the Civil War, which, then we came through that and it led to more boom times. And
yeah.
Anyways, I think that's part of it because I didn't pick up on it until I went to Austin, Texas for business a couple times in the last 6 or 8 months. I mean,
attitude's different.
Completely different.
Everyone's optimistic, happy, energetic.
There's like a hopeful optimism to everyone I would talk to, and an openness to
anything,
any kind of political belief. Or no one there is like, because that town is
mixed.
Kind of where I like to be politically. It's like, if you've got a courageous, sensible position, they're like, cool. Or even if they don't agree, they're like, tell me more. Whereas, here, as soon as I tell people, I'm not exactly like, I'm not exactly, like, I think Kamala Harris was a terrible candidate for president and I don't really like her. And I know people that know her really well and she's not a very nice person. I'm like, send me out the door, In Austin, people would be like, tell me more. I want to hear more. And I don't mean Austin just.
Yeah, Miami's the same. the energy in Miami is fantastic.
Atlanta it's like, there are all these places that are really, most of America, I think, is like really vibrant and hopeful and optimistic. And we live in a place where there's a pall over it because everyone's decided it's the end of the world. And then there's the other thing, which is just I love California, but I think California is moving backward. I think California is like killing what is great about it. And,
slowly. Daily. It's the boiling frog. I feel it's just getting 1% worse constantly. And it's just gotten so bad where, the homeless issue is one, and homeless is one, the crime is another one, the economy, taxes, rent, incomes, AI with taking away jobs. It seems like it's so much for people to just put on their shoulders that they're like, they're just kind of like blah. You know what I mean?
I think that's right. I really like, it's lost a vibe, and it could regain it, but it's really lost. It needs lost a vibrancy. And another really gutsy leader, Governor Brown. And so you see, I'm picking people all over
You're all over the field.
Brown, first time around, I was 5 or something when he was governor the first time. Was I even born? And it was a long time ago, right? The second time around, he was like, I'm old. I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks. I'm going to do what's right and they can run me out of here if they want to. And like, oh my God, like that is, and he did a lot to energize the state as a result. And like, we're not in an energized state right now. And like, our house burned down in January, but I still have a really optimistic view of life. Were you able to get permits to rebuild, or? We were thankful. We had just sold a home. And so we were in a rental. And so while we lost every single thing we owned, we didn't, it wasn't our old family home. We had been in the rental for like 8 months. Because I think after a year, only one house has been rebuilt in the Palisades. And that one house was a developer building for sale. It wasn't even a homeowner. Yeah, that whole thing. And then watching the controversy around like the mayor's office editing the fire department reports. And That's what I mean. That's gutless stuff,
Jay, I would like to have you and Mike on the show next and really get into a deep dive of what you two are trying to do, because I think what you guys are doing is really help bridging the gap between both sides and just showing people how to think more analytically to really just cut through the bullshit and just get to the root of just get behind the propaganda and really understand things for what they are instead of just listening and being fed in your echo chamber.
I'd love that. I mean, we're making a thing right now. There's this saturated fat, they redid the food guidelines for the first time in 50 years.
They inverted it.
Yeah, basically. There's that South Park where they turn it upside down. But, big food made the food pyramid. Right?
Obviously, it was
big
like
food made the food pyramid
on the
Cheerios,
to sell us food. But it goes even deeper than that. And we're going to do a little, in under 3 minutes, we're going to tell this story. And I'll see if I can do it in under 3 minutes. President Eisenhower has a heart attack in 1955. And everyone's like, holy shit. He's a general and he's strong and he looks great and he has a heart attack. People freak out. They're trying to figure out why. And this one doctor named Ancel Keys comes up with a theory, which is that it's saturated fat. And he goes, I've got a theory, I've got a hypothesis, it's this. And he looks at this one study that had been done about saturated fat and heart disease, essentially rate of heart attacks. And he looked at it and he was like, this is going to prove me right. I've decided I'm right and this is going to prove me right. And he looked at it and the dots were it actually disproved the theory. And he literally erased from the chart the countries that disproved his theory so that it looked like a straight line up where the more saturated fat, the more heart attacks you're going to have. He went to the American Heart Association, which at the time was largely funded by Procter & Gamble, who makes Crisco and seed oils and vegetable oil.
All good for you.
And he said animal fat caused Ike to have a heart attack. President Eisenhower to have a heart attack. Oh my gosh. They're like, this is amazing. And so then they come up with this idea that saturated fat's bad, and then he sells it, and then they go on the road together in the American Heart Association, which, by the way, is completely funded by, not completely, I like to be accurate, largely funded by big food and big ag, right? So they give them all this money. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, they're the people that fund the American Heart Association. And they go on the road together. He becomes famous from this. They put him on the cover of Time magazine. It's just bullshit. It's just totally made up. But then we bought it in this way that you can't even get people to undo it in their heads. And so we're going to tell that story, for example, and just as an educational perspective, here's how this came about. There's this one guy named Ancel Keys, and he just literally erased the dots on it. And later, a year or two later, when some other scientist was like, wait, I saw that same study. There's 12 countries on it that completely disprove your theory. It was too far along for anyone to get their head around the fact that it was BS. It was fat is bad. The word fat sounds bad.
Take it out. Add sugar.
Yeah.
Call it
sugar, processed food. And they were just off. The way that Big Pharma sells their drugs is we're just trying to help tell these stories.
And Jay, I'm always afraid that I'm okay, now saturated fat is back in, sugar is out. And then I'm shoot, maybe in 10 years, we're going to find out that we were brainwashed again and we just jumped on another bandwagon. Do you ever think about that?
I do. I mean, it's part of why I try to actually look into it myself now. That's when you ask, do I watch the news? And, I read, but I read with I lost my skepticism, actually. Ideology led me to lose my skepticism. And it led me to stop making decisions for myself. And the people I know who have a strong ideological bent, whether over here or over here, they lose their skepticism. They lose their ability to ask their own questions. They're like, my God, Rachel Maddow told me to believe this. Or my God, Bill O'Reilly told me to believe this. I got to know Bill and I like him. But and it's wait a second. But what if they're
both wrong?
Both wrong or being fed. It's not it's directly fed, but MSNBC, the vast majority of their funding comes from Big Pharma. When the vast majority of your funding comes from an entity of corporations, you're not going to say bad things about those people, because if you do, you'll go out of business. And so I just started looking into things myself, and it felt really empowering to get my skepticism back and to start learning about things myself.
Why can't we just leave the clock the other way?
Oh my gosh, I know. They've been trying to do that in Congress for
I don't understand what's so hard
20
about
years.
Well, what's the point of keeping the daylight savings?
that. Because
I mean,
it
you
should
know,
be 6:30 right
It started to give farmers more time to farm, but I don't even think farmers are asking for it to stay.
No.
Or just stay one way or the other. The
Yeah.
change is really
Nowhere in the world do they do it except for us.
right.
now. Yeah, because we're geniuses.
Yeah, we've done
California.
exactly. I mean, California will keep it. The other 49 states will be like, no,
Yeah.
we're good, and California will
Arizona
be like,
just
no, we're gonna.
stays on the one.
Yeah.
California's like, we will not give up a regulation.
Oh, they love regulation here.
And just like California's classic, like, you go into a building and there's the Prop 65 warning in every single
It's
building.
like, how is the warning going to help me?
Well, also, if it's
How do I not know?
if it's on every single thing,
What's it matter?
is it a warning anymore?
Yeah.
Like if I tell my children, be careful, literally every single time they do something, they stop listening to me. And
You
so
ain't getting very far.
I have to discern, this is one where I should actually say, watch out, that knife is sharp.
Jay, there's a controversial topic that I don't know if you know about this. Have you heard of body brokering?
No.
Okay. Body brokering is where you go in a different state. This is beyond illegal, but it happens in California a lot. You go to another state, you find homeless people that are addicted to drugs. You get a kickback from a facility in California, like usually $5,000, because the drug rehab here, the detox centers make about $35,000 to $45,000 per person. They'll give $5,000 to a body broker. The body broker finds someone addicted to drugs, gets them insurance, gives them $2,000, ships them to California to the rehab center. The rehab center treats the person for 30 to 45 days. They go out. Then the body broker gives them drugs to get them re-addicted to drugs and then back into the rehab center. So the rehab center stays full. They make their $30,000 to $45,000 per patient. This is a thing that's been going on in California. And if you speak to, I'm not saying all the homeless is this, but it's very prevalent in the homeless in Southern California and in California in general, where they just created this industrial complex of getting people from out of state into California, into the rehab facilities, and then out and then back in like a revolving door to just keep milking the insurance industry.
That's insane.
It's
Yeah, I
something
mean,
we're looking into.
The rehab business is, I've been sober a while. I know people that have gone through rehab and it absolutely changed their life and they wouldn't be sober without it. I have some friends that run some really up and up rehabs, and then I know some ones that are
Super shady.
super shady. The incentives can be not great, right? Wait, I do better if this person doesn't do better.
Yeah.
Like if they stay longer, I get more money. It's like running a weight loss place where you
Keep feeding
you
people.
get paid more if the person puts on weight. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I don't like
That didn't work.
that doesn't work. Yeah, that's crazy. I hadn't heard of that, but that's wild.
Yeah, it's called body brokering. It's something that was new to me because I know people that work in the industry that have been trying to expose it because of all the fraud that's going around. And that's one thing that I didn't realize it was a thing of just importing people from other states into California. And that is part of the reason why we have so much homeless here in California. Body brokering has something to do with it. And then, there's just traditional reasons why people become homeless. But
That's crazy.
And then going back to the beginning, do you think the swamp can be drained?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think it requires, it's part of what we're trying to do at Middle Calling is like tell the story of how we got here. Because I think if there's a belief that like it's always been broken, it's always been controlled by corporations, and then how would we fix it? It can't, if it's always been this way, then we can't. It hasn't always been this way. And there's usually a simple story with some twists and turns to it, but there's usually a simple story for how something got so messed up. And so, yeah, it'll take more than one administration. It'll take more than one term. It'll take a complete revamping of the way the place works. But, just having the conversation now about the fact that, about corporate capture, right? Like just the fact that you're interested enough in the fact that the regulatory agencies have the corporations, are populated by the corporations they're supposed to regulate, and they've got their people inside the corporations too. All of that kind of stuff, and like how senators and Congress people become lobbyists after. All of that is like, we're into the conversation now about why it's so broken.
We're in the conversation, but earlier on when we were talking, you said, I got to be careful not to deflect because of my political experience.
Yeah.
But even though that we bring it up, politicians are really good at like deflecting the question, changing the subject, or just being like, oh, just brushing it off.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I do, but I think, I don't know how many people voted. It was like almost 80 million people voted for President Trump. A lot of those people, he wasn't particularly their personal cup of tea, but he was saying, this place is broken. And I think that the power of, so to me, that argument is really powerful. And so I think I think the continued deflection on the part of people that are in Washington and they're a part of the problem is not going to work long term. I could be wrong. You know, I mean, it's definitely a David versus Goliath fight, because the other side, you know, it is and it isn't. Like, the corporations have billions and trillions of dollars, but
I think people can vote with the power of the purse. People can vote with their spending dollars. If they know a corporation is nefarious, they're buying their politicians and they're putting out bad product that's making you sick.
Yeah.
If it's exposed, people can not shop there.
Just reading, there's been a lot of change in the conversation that started that, you know, and I've seen this happen. Like, even if the change doesn't happen overnight, I would watch it in a presidential primary. Like, we'd all be talking about, you know, my shoes and my Converse and this and that. Some other candidate, some bomb thrower candidate would come into the primary, and the three of us are my shoes, and they would come in and just demand that the conversation be about the ceiling. Well, all of a sudden, the whole thing shifted to talking about that, and like, that's been happening as people have started to question corporate control, you know, and so I do think it can be drained. I think it's tough, but I think there's a reckoning that's about to happen, I think, with both political parties, that we're going to see coming as the baby boomers finally move off the stage. And then it's like, well, who moves in to take over? And there will probably be some people with some courage on both sides of the aisle. And then, you know, maybe we end up in that conversation.
Do you think corporations are owning basically the government is one of the biggest threats to the government?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest threat, actually. There are some other stuff, but that's the biggest threat. Yeah.
So if we can get rid of that, then the change really comes.
Yeah.
And I think the way we get rid of that is with the people, with their spending, to choose how they spend. Maybe they spend on smaller individual, small mom and pops, and not big corporations to, I guess, sway the votes.
Big pharma controls a lot of it too.
Yeah.
Who's the biggest? Why would you rank like the biggest industry that controls the government the most? Who would be number one, number two, number three?
Literally big pharma. I think big pharma is the biggest industry in the world. I don't have these memorized, but like there's big pharma, big tech, big defense, big food, big ag, big chemical, you know, and they're all, but I do think big pharma is the biggest of all. But if you could if you allowed the regulatory agencies in Washington to do their job, and then we all realized that we were being lied to, you know, that's the other thing, is that like the people in Washington are lying to us, the corporations are lying to us. And so I need to just learn what I'm doing. I now, like, my wife laughs, but like in the last 2 years, I've started reading labels on my food, you know, and I'm like, because I've learned more. And
well, it's written in Chinese math, the labels. You can't understand some of the ingredients in there.
Totally. If I can't understand an ingredient, I'm not buying it anymore, because I've now learned that big food is just trying to sell me processed food because they have the highest margin on it. They just want to make money. And I'm not mad at them about that. Like, I'm not a socialist that's like, these corporations, their profits should be locked in. They should make as much money as they want to make it, that they can legally make.
You know, Europe has a really interesting food label. They not only have the calories, but they have A, B, C, D, and it tells you if this is an A or B or C or D. So you don't even have to read the labels. It's just like it's got a grading system. You just know I'm getting a bar of Kit Kat and it says D.
Yeah,
I think that's
well, just like other countries, they don't have half the ingredients we have.
That's right. Yeah, they're not allowed. You know, there's the GRAS standards, which 6 months ago. I was like, what? For grass? And it's like, no, it's generally recognized as safe. And we have over 4,000 chemicals that you can just put on or in food here, and you don't even need to tell anybody about it. And that number is a few hundred in Europe. So over 4,000 here, we don't even know that they're in our food.
Because they don't have to disclose.
And because they just, this one's fine, and this one's fine, and this one's fine. Because the chemical companies send their lobby back to that senator, give that guy $3-4-5 million, and he'll get you 20 new chemicals that you can put into or on your food, and it'll be totally fine. And how much money can you save with that? You don't need to tell anybody about it.
Well, this should be all public information. Did someone make a website that shows like who's paying which senators and which senators are pushing what laws that put
idea.
all these bad ingredients in our food so we can vote them out?
It's a great idea. I mean,
It's time to do it, Jay.
we should. It's a great idea.
Jay and Mike. This is a Jay and Mike thing.
They do exist. There are these.
But it's so convoluted,
It's
so
so
difficult
convoluted,
to find.
exactly.
If there was one website that says, hey, this politician took money from this big pharma and these laws got passed and these bad ingredients got into people's food and this is how many people got cancer, this is how many people died.
With AI, it shouldn't be that hard to
It
back
really
up.
shouldn't.
Super easy.
And the interesting part of it too is also who left
And where did they
who
go?
left Congress and which lobbying firm did they go to and who do they lobby for and who are they friends with and who,
It's like that plane tracker that kid did that was like tracking all like Elon Musk's jet.
Yeah.
It should be a tracker for
It really
politicians of where they're going and what their voting history is. And are they like net positive or net negative to America?
Someone smarter than me should do. Maybe we'll try to do it at Middle Calling, but someone smarter than me who's better, someone younger than me should
I feel like there's somebody out there that can make this happen.
I agree.
sure.
It'd be great because you would
And we'd have you on the show so we can talk about it.
you would just know. Well, like there was this when, and I thought Bernie Sanders had such guts. He like came into both of those presidential primaries and
But
nobody
then
wanted.
he flies in private jets and like has millions of dollars in homes, and it's like, come on, man. If you
And then
talk the talk, walk it.
In that hearing where he was going after Bobby, and Bobby finally pulled out this piece of information, which is, you're the largest recipient of big pharma dollars of anyone in the Senate.
It was like, we don't want to talk about it now. I've got no more questions.
He's, and he was like, well, it's not from executives. And maybe this is like what I end up doing at Middle Calling is like parsing through that stuff. He's like, it's not from the executives, it's from the individual employees. And I was like, that's called bundling. And Mike was like, what's that? And I was like, you guys don't know what bundling is? And so I'll tell you what bundling is right now. It's when elected official won't, for image reasons, sometimes it's for their actual beliefs and values, but a lot of times it's just for their image. When they won't take money from the executives or the corporate pack from this industry because they want to be able to tell us how clean they are, what the industry does is they go, all right, well, hey guys, it's illegal now to tell your employees to give money to someone. So they just, like the way the mob does, where they're like, Vinny, make sure that, he doesn't, make sure whoever sleeps with the fishes, like sleeps with the fishes. What does that mean? Like no one's ever said, go kill Ralphie. But so that's what they do. And the corporations they encourage legally their employees to all give to a certain candidate so that they've received millions of dollars from an industry.
From 1,000 employees.
Exactly. And it has the same effect on that person. They've received tons of money from an industry and it affects their decisions. I've been behind where we started. I've been behind those curtains. I know how it affects people's decision making when you're getting millions of dollars from an industry. Like, so there's this interesting thing happening now as some of this is getting rooted out at these regulatory agencies, and a lot of the hacks are getting fired, and a lot of the the people who have been doing it the same way for 30 years are getting moved out. The corporations are starting to move to these associations, right? So the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association. These organizations are funded by the people that they are theoretically the gold standard of. So let's take the American Academy of Pediatrics, for example. Their annual budget's like 120 something million a year. They take $6 million a year from Big Pharma that they list on their website. Like $6 million annually? Like who says no to $6 million annually? Who would be willing to piss those people off? So they
6%.
won't. That's just that. So then the other way that it works is they have a journal called Pediatrics. Guess where the largest source of advertising in the journal Pediatrics comes from? I'm gonna let you guys guess.
That's 6 million.
No, that 6 million is donations that come straight in the door.
Okay.
Then they sell ads to Big Pharma in the journal Pediatrics, which total, you can't know how much they are, but they're way more than $6 million, right? Like, so they have a publication that essentially sells ads exclusively to Big Pharma. So now we've got that chunk of the budget coming from that. Then there's a third income source from Big Pharma, which is they sell reprints whenever an article appears favorably about a drug. So like we've got the, UB493, which is the green plant drug. And oh my gosh, there's a great article in the journal Pediatrics about how healthy this is, and it's going to stop my toe rot from happening. I'm just making shit up as I go. But like, there's this great article in the journal Pediatrics. You can buy what's called reprints, and you have to pay for them. And it's a physical printed copy of the article with the cover of the journal Pediatrics on it. Big Pharma pays for those. And then they go and hand them out to doctors and say, man, I've got this great new thing. And it was in the journal Pediatrics. And so you've got this whole amazing closed loop, which, by the way, was invented by Arthur Sackler, one of the great marketing geniuses of the world. He invented this whole process. So like, I don't know how much of the American Academy of Pediatrics budget comes from Big Pharma, but it's a lot. And then they have opinions about Big Pharma's medications. Like, those opinions can't be unbiased. Like, they can't be. And maybe, like, I'm not going to say that they can't be unbiased.
It's very difficult for it
There
to
are
be.
millions and millions of dollars. I'll just state the facts, actually, because I don't like it when people jump to, it's like they take millions and millions a year from Big Pharma, and then they espouse opinions about Big Pharma's products. Okay. But I didn't know any of that until I started to do my own research. I just did all this research in the last 6 months because I watched as people started, they would well, the CDC guidelines are this, and then those changed. And so they're like, well, the AAP's guidelines are this. And I was like, let me look into where their money comes from. My favorite movie growing up was All the President's Men, about Watergate. And there's that great whispered line, follow the money. And it took me a while to figure it out working in Washington, but now that's what I do. I'm like, okay, you have that opinion. Let me just look and see where the money comes from. Oh, okay. You have a really favorable opinion of all these Big Pharma things, and probably tens of millions of dollars a year coming from Big Pharma. Maybe you're unbiased, but I'd have a hard time being unbiased.
Low probability.
I'd have a hard time being unbiased.
Yeah.
Anyone I've worked for, I've had a hard time saying really bad stuff about them publicly if they paid my paycheck,
Yeah, of course.
That'd be kind of difficult.
Yeah. That's one. The Heart Association has a similar story. The American Medical Association has a similar story. A huge percentage of their funding comes from JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical. Same thing. Big Pharma advertises in that. It's a huge part of their budget. I don't fault them for taking money for them. It's just that
where's the fiduciary responsibility?
I actually fault us in not understanding it better. Like, I fault myself for having fallen for that for so long. Like, you're taking tens of millions of dollars from these people. I was using these arguments at the beginning of COVID. I was like, well, the AMA and the this and the that all says it's okay. These guys were just created sui generis and they just exist out there for the good of the world. No, it's fine, but I need to be smarter about it. It's totally okay. It's just I need to be smarter about it. Corporations are supposed to make money. These organizations can take money from them. Let's just pull it. That's what we're trying to do. Let's just pull it back and see what's actually happening. Tons of money goes from these guys. These guys offer independent opinions about it. We can decide if that feels independent or not.
Back in the day, before the mortgage meltdown, one of the issues were the appraisals were inflated for a lot of the homes. And back in before the overhaul of the mortgage industry, the broker would hire the appraiser, and it was always the same appraiser, and they'd be like, yeah, we need to refinance this property. It's worth 1.5.
Yeah.
And if the appraiser came in at $1 million, you're like, dude, you just killed my deal. I'm not going to give you any more work.
There you go.
The next appraiser would come in. Oh, you came in at value? All right, I got another property for you. I got another property for you. And all of a sudden, all your properties are going to one appraiser, and that appraiser has to come in at that value. Otherwise, they're not going to get the job. Now, luckily, with the Dodd-Frank, they separated that, made a separate appraisal agency. Now you randomly get an appraiser. You don't know who it is. Mm-hmm. So that prevented that. But I think something similar like that needs to happen for...
It's not a lot of, it's evil and It's just
Human
it's just-
nature.
I was literally just about to say it's just a part of human nature. I actually think that humans have an incredible capacity for hope and love and connection, all that sort of stuff. And then there's also the like, I want to get mine and you want to get. It's just human nature. But I needed to go on a journey to see it for what it was, as opposed to thinking that it was like, oh, really? It's interesting. They just have an appraiser every time that hits the dollar amount, just a little over the dollar amount that they need it to be. Oh, that's curious. And that caused
The entire economy almost to crash.
It crashed the global economy. And that closed loop of these regulatory agencies owned by the corporations and the associations that are supposed to give us independent opinion also being, having this, incredible control by, we're the sickest developed country in the world. This stuff doesn't exist in most other developed countries. It exists, but not to this sort of, we're Americans, we like to overdo things, right? Not to like this level,
Where do people find you?
At middle_calling on Instagram.
Okay, we'll tag you. And then Mike?
Mike is the same. I mean, my personal Instagram is HECOMALU, Hikomalu, which is I'm not Hawaiian. It's the first two letters of my 4 kids' names.
Okay.
So and Mike is, I don't know what Mike is. Mike Pitch.
We'll tag him. We'll put him down.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah.
you.